The bewildering disappearance of Kelsey Berreth in late 2018 quickly transformed from a mere missing person inquiry into a grave murder investigation, ultimately resulting in the conviction of her former fiancé, Patrick Frazee. This sorrowful account, characterized by deliberate falsehoods, the pivotal evidence from a key witness, and the persistent grief caused by Kelsey's unrecovered remains, offers a stark glimpse into a truly shocking criminal act. Kelsey Berreth, born on the 15th of September, 1989, in Moses Lake, Washington, led a life marked by dedication and aspiration. Her upbringing on a family farm fostered a strong work ethic. Though farm chores occupied her time, her gaze frequently turned skyward. The sight of crop-dusting airplanes sparked in her a profound fascination with aviation, igniting a childhood ambition to pilot. This aspiration drove her to enroll in college for pilot training immediately following her high school graduation. Having earned her license, she then secured a position as a flight instructor, adeptly balancing her teaching career alongside assisting her family on the farm. Even with her demanding schedule, Kelsey deeply desired to establish her own family. In 2016, at 27 years old, Kelsey's personal life appeared to take a promising turn as she connected with Patrick Frazee through an online platform. Like Kelsey, Patrick was involved in agriculture, sharing her longing for a large family. After several months of communication, Kelsey made the momentous decision to relocate to Colorado to reside with him, becoming engaged during that same period. A prestigious role as a flight instructor at an aviation academy specializing in military pilot instruction was quickly obtained by her. This represented an excellent professional opportunity. However, the academy's location, 70 miles from Patrick's farm, necessitated Kelsey leasing a residence in Woodland Park. Though they maintained separate dwellings, they maximized their shared time, and their bond progressed swiftly. Early in 2017, Kelsey discovered she was expecting, and soon thereafter, the couple joyfully welcomed a baby girl. Evidently, Kelsey's long-cherished dream of having a family was finally materializing. Nevertheless, not long after their daughter's arrival, distinct signs of distress began to surface in their relationship. Patrick, Kelsey observed, became increasingly distant, demonstrating waning enthusiasm for their shared future. Despite her sincere efforts to mend their connection, the underlying strain persisted, gradually widening the emotional chasm between them. On Thanksgiving Day, the 22nd of November, 2018, Kelsey had planned to host a holiday meal. That morning, she conversed with her mother about festive preparations, mentioning a brief grocery store visit for ingredients. Over the subsequent few days, Kelsey dispatched a handful of text messages to her mother. Then, without any prior indication, all communication abruptly ceased. Initially, her mother presumed Kelsey was simply preoccupied, juggling her professional life and the demands of caring for her one-year-old. However, as an entire week passed with no contact, her concern intensified. She reached out to Kelsey's elder brother. He also confirmed he had received no communication from her. Desperate for clarification, she telephoned Patrick, hoping he might shed some light on the situation. But his reply only exacerbated her apprehension. Patrick asserted that he and Kelsey had terminated their relationship on Thanksgiving Day, more than a week prior. Kelsey, he claimed, had informed him she required solitude and wished to break up. He then alleged she had purportedly left their daughter with him, collected some personal items, and had not been in touch since. This account, Kelsey's mother found highly implausible. She could not conceive of her daughter abandoning her child without any communication, especially considering Kelsey had seemed perfectly content and enthusiastic about Thanksgiving dinner during their call that very morning. Feeling a growing disquiet, Kelsey's mother requested Patrick to check on Kelsey at her residence. He agreed to do so, but stated he first needed to complete some farm duties. However, the promised follow-up call never occurred. Realizing something was fundamentally amiss, Kelsey's mother made the decision to contact law enforcement. Upon their arrival at Kelsey's Woodland Park residence, officers found her vehicle parked outside, yet no indication of her presence inside. Lacking a warrant, they were unable to enter, thus only confirming her absence. Patrick reiterated his breakup narrative to the officers, appending a new detail. Kelsey had supposedly taken her handgun from his property. She had been exhibiting peculiar behavior, he claimed, and he expressed apprehension that she might have engaged in something drastic. Upon securing authorized entry into Kelsey's home, the enigma surrounding her disappearance grew significantly. All her essential possessions, clothing, documents remained, yet her vehicle keys were conspicuously absent, a perplexing detail considering her car was located directly outside. This inconsistency prompted the formal commencement of a missing person investigation. Analysis of Kelsey's mobile phone data revealed its final signal on the 25th of November, 3 days following her last confirmed sighting, originating from Gooding, Idaho, approximately 800 miles away. Her family confirmed Kelsey had no known connections in that distant area, rendering the location bewildering. Local authorities in Gooding found no trace of her, which was highly unusual for such a small community. Reviewing CCTV footage from Kelsey's Thanksgiving grocery trip, she appeared entirely normal, displaying no signs of distress or any indication of an impending departure. Another thorough search of her dwelling, however, yielded no immediate breakthroughs. Days elapsed without significant advancements, prompting Kelsey's mother and brother to travel to Colorado to assist in the search efforts. While staying at Kelsey's home, her mother sensed an unsettling atmosphere. Then, Kelsey's brother observed a reddish stain inside the toilet bowl. Police confirmed it was human blood. This grim discovery led to a more extensive forensic examination utilizing luminol, a chemical that reveals even faint traces of blood. The findings were chilling. Blood illuminated across the walls and floor of the bathroom, and large, meticulously scrubbed away stains were discernible in the living room. Laboratory results confirmed the blood belonged to Kelsey. Crucially, 2 additional DNA profiles were identified, 1 male, 1 female. Now, nearly certain Kelsey was deceased, investigators redirected their focus to identifying these 2 individuals. Patrick naturally became the primary suspect. His inconsistent narratives and lack of cooperation became even more pronounced. His mobile phone records indicated calls and texts to Kelsey until the 25th of November, the day she stopped responding to others. However, detectives suspected Kelsey had been murdered on Thanksgiving, the 22nd of November, raising the disturbing possibility that someone else had used her phone for those later messages. Their attention was drawn to repeated calls Patrick made to a Gooding, Idaho area code both before and after Kelsey's disappearance. Tracing the number, it was found to belong to a nurse named Crystal Lee. When first contacted, Crystal asserted a business affiliation with Patrick concerning horses. Pressed about their last encounter, she hesitantly acknowledged they were scheduled to meet after Thanksgiving to acquire a horse. However, she claimed she returned home because Patrick lacked sufficient funds. Her narrative appeared dubious. A journey spanning nearly 1,000 miles solely to view a horse, particularly in a borrowed, fuel-efficient vehicle, a detail that seemed excessively precise, perhaps intended to bypass traffic surveillance, raised considerable doubts. Crystal's assertion that she had learned of Kelsey's disappearance from news reports, despite residing out of state before it gained widespread media coverage, further heightened suspicion. Investigators delving deeper into Crystal's background contacted her former spouse. He directly contradicted Crystal's previous statements, disclosing that she and Patrick had known each other since 2006, with Patrick being her first romantic interest. Their relationship had been intermittent, even continuing into 2017 while Patrick was engaged to Kelsey. Her former spouse also exposed Crystal's deception regarding her whereabouts post-Thanksgiving. Initially, she had claimed to visit friends, but later admitted being in Colorado. Additionally, on the 4th of December, the very day police confiscated Patrick's phone, Crystal suspiciously requested her former spouse's assistance in purchasing a new phone, claiming to have misplaced hers. Equipped with this critical information, investigators secured a warrant for Crystal's DNA sample. While she complied, she resolutely refused to answer any inquiries. They also examined the borrowed vehicle, discovering a missing bullet from a handgun the friend kept inside, which had purportedly been fully loaded. Another acquaintance, Michelle, provided a startling revelation. Crystal telephoned her in late October, confiding that Patrick had asked her to assassinate his fiancée. Patrick purportedly claimed Kelsey was mistreating their daughter, asserting he required someone else to commit the crime. Michelle implored Crystal to notify the authorities, but she never did. This new information entirely reshaped the investigation, leading law enforcement to strongly suspect the involvement of both Patrick and Crystal. Despite the accumulating circumstantial evidence, they still lacked concrete proof of the precise events that had transpired. Then, Crystal herself initiated contact, stating she had retained legal counsel and was prepared to speak. She confessed that Patrick had murdered Kelsey and that she had subsequently assisted in concealing the crime scene. Crystal's comprehensive confession unveiled Patrick's months-long scheme to murder Kelsey, with his initial intention for Crystal to carry out the act. She recounted how Patrick persuaded her that Kelsey was abusing their daughter with drugs and alcohol, insisting that eliminating her was the only viable solution. Crystal, under his influence, agreed to comply. 2 months before Kelsey's disappearance, their initial plan involved Crystal, a nurse, poisoning Kelsey's preferred coffee with medication. Crystal was to pose as a new neighbor. In September, she approached Kelsey's residence with the coffee, but ultimately could not bring herself to carry out the deed. The coffee remained untainted. Their first attempt thus failed. Patrick's subsequent plan was more direct. Crystal was instructed to drive to his farm, retrieve a metal pipe he had prepared, proceed to Kelsey's residence, and kill her. She drove nearly 1,000 miles, obtained the pipe, and even pulled up outside Kelsey's home. But again, she could not commit the act. Patrick's third scheme was similar, substituting the pipe with a baseball bat. Crystal once more undertook the lengthy drive, acquired the weapon, and approached Kelsey's house, but again, she failed to follow through. Patrick then realized he would have to commit the murder himself. According to Crystal, the murder transpired on Thanksgiving afternoon. Patrick arrived at Kelsey's house with a malevolent stratagem. He proposed they play a guessing game with holiday-scented candles, blindfolding Kelsey. The moment the blindfold was secured, Patrick seized the baseball bat and violently murdered her, with their 1-year-old daughter in the adjacent room. Afterward, he placed Kelsey's body in a large plastic container, loaded it into his vehicle's trunk, and, acting as if nothing had occurred, drove with his daughter to his family's Thanksgiving dinner. All the while, Kelsey's body remained concealed just yards away inside his vehicle as his relatives celebrated. Following dinner, Patrick drove to a barn he had rented in Gyp Creek, leaving Kelsey's body there for several days. That night, he telephoned Crystal, instructing her to come and rectify the mess he had created, a clear indication that Kelsey was deceased. To obscure her involvement, Crystal borrowed her friend's vehicle. She then gathered a collection of cleaning supplies and departed for Colorado. En route, Patrick called again with a chilling instruction. He warned her to be exceedingly careful because he could not locate one of Kelsey's teeth, and explicitly stated he did not want it discovered in an inappropriate place. Upon entering Kelsey's home, Crystal was confronted by a horrifying scene. Blood was splattered everywhere, across walls, the floor, and even the ceiling. She spent over 4 hours scrubbing, yet some stains proved impossible to eradicate. She collected blood-soaked items, bagged them, and loaded them into her vehicle. After completing the cleanup, she calmly stopped at a cafe for a meal before meeting Patrick. They then drove to a gas station, where Patrick filled a canister with gasoline, then proceeded to his farm. There, they constructed a large fire and cremated Kelsey's remains. Crystal recounted Patrick's mother stepping outside while they were by the flames, though it remains unconfirmed if she comprehended the true nature of their actions. Before Crystal left, Patrick handed her Kelsey's phone. For several days, Crystal used it to respond to texts, maintaining the deceitful impression that Kelsey was still alive, before finally destroying it, thereby severing Kelsey's last connection to the outside world. Despite her role in the concealment, Crystal maintained she acted under duress, fearing she and her children would become Patrick's next victims if she did not comply. She asserted Patrick had explicitly threatened them. Crystal also claimed she attempted to assist law enforcement by deliberately leaving some bloodstains, hoping they would be found. However, detectives remained highly skeptical, noting her numerous opportunities to prevent the murder and her active participation in the cover-up. Ultimately, her confession was prompted by her lawyer's advice to accept a plea agreement, which reduced the charges against her to a single count of evidence tampering related to the destruction of Kelsey's phone. Even with Crystal's detailed confession, law enforcement still required irrefutable physical evidence for trial. A previous search of Patrick's farm had yielded nothing, but with Crystal's guidance, they revisited the property. She identified the precise location where the burning had occurred. Despite Patrick's meticulous efforts to conceal the evidence, forensic experts unearthed trace amounts of cremated human remains after sifting through layers of soil and ash. While insufficient material remained for DNA analysis, and the tooth crystal found was too severely damaged for conclusive identification, a critical breakthrough emerged from the DNA samples discovered in Kelsey's home. They definitively matched Patrick and Crystal. This constituted the conclusive piece of evidence required. Patrick Frazee was subsequently apprehended and charged with first-degree murder. Remaining incarcerated, he consistently denied guilt as prosecutors diligently prepared their case. The prosecution presented multiple potential motives. Firstly, his desire to permanently terminate their failing relationship, a complex matter given their shared child. Secondly, financial difficulties and the risk of forfeiting a portion of his agricultural business were believed to have also contributed to his decision to kill Kelsey. By the time of the trial, compelling proof of Patrick's culpability had been amassed. His mobile phone records indicated he spent several hours at Kelsey's home on the day of the murder, directly contradicting his assertion of a brief visit. A neighbor's CCTV footage further undermined his account, showing him arriving but not departing for multiple hours. Another damning detail: after leaving Kelsey's residence, Patrick's phone traveled to his farm, and Kelsey's phone moved concurrently with his, without even being deactivated. For days, Kelsey's phone remained near Patrick until he transferred it to Crystal for misleading text messages before its ultimate destruction. Additional surveillance footage linked Patrick to the crime, depicting him driving with the large plastic container used for Kelsey's body and showing him and Crystal obtaining gasoline in a canister at a service station. During the trial, a mobile carrier store employee testified that Patrick, on the day his phone was confiscated, suspiciously inquired about remotely deleting all data from a device. Perhaps the most incriminating testimony came from one of Patrick's cellmates, who revealed Patrick had compiled a hit list while awaiting trial, containing 3 individuals: Crystal, her former spouse, and Kelsey's mother. He unambiguously expressed his desire for their demise. This collective evidence left no room for doubt regarding Patrick's guilt and demonstrated his persistent dangerousness. Given the overwhelming evidence, augmented by Crystal's testimony, the jury unanimously found Patrick Frazee guilty of murder. He received a sentence of life imprisonment without parole, plus an additional 156 years. Crystal's plea agreement resulted in a notably lenient sentence of merely 3 years in prison, subsequently reduced to 18 months, with the potential for early release after only 1 year. Despite her capacity to have prevented the crime and her active participation in the concealment, she served minimal time and has since been at liberty. A nonprofit organization founded by Kelsey's parents now helps aspiring pilots, a beautiful way to honor her enduring passion for aviation and keep her memory alive.
On the 1st of October 2012, 5-year-old April Sue Lynn Jones vanished and was murdered in the peaceful Welsh town of Machynlleth, shocking people throughout the UK and internationally. This case not only showed how truly evil people can be, but it also led to significant changes in how tech companies deal with the spread of child abuse content. The unimaginable loss of April, as her body was never completely found, still deeply affects many, acting as a harsh reminder of how susceptible children are and how destructive these types of crimes can be. April, born on the 4th of April, 2007, lived in Machynlleth, a calm British town of around 2,000 residents, situated away from busy urban areas. She was the youngest child in her family, having an older brother and sister. She loved spending time with her friends, riding her favorite pink bike around town, and swimming. In 2012, when she was 5, April started primary school and quickly impressed her teachers with how smart and determined she was. She was very outgoing and quickly made friends with other kids. On the 1st of October, 2012, April went to a swimming lesson at a nearby sports center, while her parents were at a school meeting. After the lesson, she asked a friend to come over, and her parents drove them both home. The 2 girls watched cartoons together. At about 7 p.m., April said she wanted to go outside for a walk. Her mother was unsure at first because it was getting dark, but April's ability to convince her, along with her great school performance the day before, led her mom to say yes. Her mom just told the girls to stay near the house, so April took her bike and rode away. Roughly 20 minutes later, April's mother went outside to call her inside, but April wasn't there. She instantly felt panicked. She started looking on nearby streets, hoping to see her daughter. Their neighborhood was a small group of apartment buildings located on the edge of town. She looked behind buildings, but April was nowhere to be found. Eventually, she saw April's friend and rushed over to ask if she had seen April. The friend's response deeply unnerved her. A car stopped beside them. April talked to the person driving, got into the car, and then they left. After hearing this, April's mother panicked completely and called the police right away. Officers arrived quickly and spoke to April's friend. The girl said the vehicle was a gray van, and the driver was a man with dark hair and a beard, dressed in a green jacket and sweatpants. She saw him clearly because he got out of the van to help April get in. April's mother later clarified that April had cerebral palsy, making it hard for her to get into a car by herself. April's friend also mentioned something strange. April got into the van on what the friend thought was the driver's side. Police quickly understood that this probably meant the van was a left-hand drive, which is unusual in the UK where most cars are right-hand drive. April's friend probably confused the passenger side with the driver's seat. Understanding that April had most likely been kidnapped, police immediately requested more officers and classified the event as critical. A huge search began, and investigators sent out an alert with information about the suspect and his van. Information about April's disappearance quickly spread, starting in the neighborhood and then reaching further out. Many people gathered outside her house, wanting to help with the search, but at this point, the crowd actually made it harder for police who needed to interview people door to door. At the same time, people started sharing the news online, attracting even more volunteers to the location. As the night continued, hundreds of people joined the search, looking through the streets alongside the police. The situation was so pressing that even the local trash collection stopped, with all workers leaving their jobs to help search for April. Soon after, the case became national news. News organizations reported on the story, and the police made a public request for help, releasing April's picture and a description of the suspect, which resulted in many tips. Sadly, even with the huge effort, the first search found nothing. Within the first few hours, the whole town was searched thoroughly, but April was not found. The next stage involved searching the nearby forests and fields, which was difficult. It was completely dark, and it had started raining. The area around the town was uneven and hard to get through, and officers knew they wouldn't be able to search much territory during the night. Despite this, they kept going. The search went on until morning, and when the sun came up, even more volunteers, some from other towns, came to help. Police broadened their search, placing missing person alerts on billboards outside the city, hoping for any clues. As the news of the case spread nationwide, police received countless calls, but most tips were unhelpful. Yet, one name repeatedly came up that morning from several callers. Local resident, 6-year-old Mark Bridger. He rapidly became a suspect for multiple reasons. First, he fit the description of the suspect. Second, he was among the few people in town who owned a left-hand drive car. But the most significant warning sign was that someone had seen Bridger's car close to April's neighborhood when she disappeared. When police started looking into Mark Bridger's past, they found a long criminal record, though most of his offenses were not severe. He had been arrested many times for attacks, stealing, and other crimes such as driving without a license. Detectives began to locate him and discovered several addresses where he might be staying. They sent officers to all the addresses at the same time, but Bridger and his car were not there. Then, just minutes later, detectives had a breakthrough. A police helicopter saw him walking his dog close to his house. What was truly noticeable was how he acted. The helicopter had been flying overhead for almost 30 minutes, and he never looked up once. Shortly after, a police officer went up to Bridger and asked him to say who he was. He stated his name and immediately said, "I know why you're here." The officer then asked the question everyone urgently wanted an answer to: "Where is April?" Bridger replied, "It was an accident. My car hit her." He was arrested right away and taken to the police station. On the way to the station, Bridger kept talking, even though the officer didn't ask him anything else. He stated he didn't know where April was because he had lost consciousness. He said that after he accidentally hit her with his car, She didn't respond. He panicked, put her in his car, and tried to help her with first aid, but it didn't work. Then, he alleged he couldn't remember anything for hours, and when he woke up, April's body was no longer there. Bridger maintained that once he understood what occurred, he spent the whole night looking for her, walking through forests and fields. He also asserted that he only found out who April was that morning when he saw television news reports about her being missing. Predictably, detectives found Bridger's account hard to believe because of many contradictions. First, April's friends saw it all. She clearly recalled April speaking to the driver and getting into the van with his assistants, fully awake. Bridger, however, insisted he had struck her with his car and put her inside while she was unconscious, a version that just didn't align with what the eyewitness said. Then there was his claim of a memory blackout, which seemed unlikely by itself. What made it even more suspicious was what police found out next. Soon after April went missing, Bridger had cut off his hair and shaved his beard, obviously trying to change how he looked to avoid being caught. Despite this, Bridger stuck to his story. When detectives highlighted the inconsistencies, he slightly changed his story, now saying he had been very drunk that day, which he implied could explain his claimed memory loss. He also maintained that while he couldn't recall where he had placed April's body, he was certain she was deceased and in a secure location. No matter how hard investigators questioned him, they couldn't get the truth out of him. Therefore, they turned their attention to his home. As soon as they entered, they were met with a powerful scent of cleaning supplies. The house was also unpleasantly warm. That's when they saw the wood-burning stove in the living room, which had clearly been in use for a long time. Forensic teams gathered the ashes and sent them for analysis. Other than that, there were no clear clues. No trace of April, no possessions, nothing. However, when forensic experts examined more closely, they found blood traces, and lab tests later confirmed it belonged to April. Next, investigators focused on Bridger's car. If his claim that he accidentally hit April with his vehicle was true, there should have been some proof, but there wasn't any. There was no blood in the car, no damage to the outside, nothing to indicate an accident had happened. Again, his account of what happened didn't make sense. Then came the disturbing findings from the ashes in his fireplace. Forensic specialists discovered 17 human bone fragments, all identified as April's. An additional bone fragment was also found in the bathroom drain. This confirmed the devastating truth. April was dead. But detectives didn't believe Bridger had completely destroyed her remains. It was much more probable that he had taken what was left and concealed it elsewhere. So, even with the grim finding, police continued their search, determined to find any remaining traces. The news that April was likely deceased deeply impacted the community. Up until then, people had held on to the belief that she would be found alive. Now, the search's main goal had changed. Hundreds of volunteers and police officers were now searching not for a missing girl, but for her remains, so her family could properly bury her. By that time, the search operation had become enormous. In fact, it would become the largest in the country's recent history. Along with local volunteers, hundreds of professionals from different emergency services participated. They searched challenging areas, rivers, forests, lakes, committed to finding any sign of April. At the same time, detectives kept looking for evidence connecting Bridger to the crime. When they checked his computer, they discovered something very disturbing. It contained illegal content featuring children. Even more horrifying, he had saved pictures of victims from other well-known cases. Additionally, they found many images of local children from their town, including April and her older sister. It appeared he had been getting their photos from social media. Investigators then found out something even more troubling. April's older sister disclosed that only a few months before she was taken, Bridger had sent her a social media friend request. She had told her father about it, who instantly recognized the name. He had known Bridger in the early 1992nd, but had lost contact with him over time. The request seemed strange to him. Why would Bridger, an adult man, want to befriend his teenage daughter? Following his gut feeling, he told her not to accept it. It's also important to mention that Bridger was a father, having 6 children with 4 different women. However, when April went missing, he was living by himself. Police uncovered a concerning pattern. Bridger often sought relationships with women who had small children. Considering the terrible evidence on his computer, this information became much more significant and only made detectives more certain they were dealing with a predator. As police investigated Bridger's past further, they found that he never stayed in one job for long, always moving between different types of work. He also tended to make up stories about himself. He told some people he had been in the military and even had to change his identity for safety, but that was entirely false. What made it even more peculiar was that he repeated this assertion during police questioning. He maintained that he had served his country, was a good person, and would never have done something like this intentionally. Combining that with his odd claims about April's death, detectives started to realize they were likely dealing with someone who compulsively lied. No matter how many times his stories were shown to be untrue, he just kept believing them. They also discovered something else that supported this idea. Bridger had told everyone he knew that his parents had passed away, but they were actually still alive. Another noteworthy detail was that Bridger had recently ended his relationship with his girlfriend just days before April was kidnapped. Those who knew him said he reacted very poorly to it. He began drinking a lot, which only made his situation worse. As police kept searching his computer, they found something even more unsettling. Only hours before April vanished, Bridger had messaged 3 different women asking to meet, but they all rejected him. Following that, he accessed and viewed some illegal material from his disturbing collection. At this point, his culpability appeared obvious. Even with strong evidence, one big issue persisted. April's body parts had not been found. Eager for information, detectives repeatedly asked the public for help, hoping someone had seen Bridger or his car that night. Even a small clue could help them reconstruct his actions and finally discover what he did with April's body. Eventually, a witness provided an intriguing piece of information. He stated he saw Bridger the morning after April was kidnapped at about 9 a.m. The man was walking by the river, carrying a black bag. Investigators also found out that soon after, Bridger had taken his car to be repaired. The mechanics remembered him clearly because he had behaved oddly. By then, everyone in town was aware of April's disappearance, and feelings were intense. But Bridger discussed the case as if he were a sorrowful parent. He was nearly crying, talking as if the missing child was his own. His response seemed unusual to the workers. It was too emotional, almost like a performance, and it just felt wrong. After this new tip, search teams concentrated their efforts along the river, hoping to discover any sign of April. But no matter how carefully they searched the area, they still found nothing. Understanding that April's body might never be found, detectives made a tough choice. They charged Bridger with murder, based on the strong evidence they already possessed. With April's blood discovered inside Bridger's house, police reconstructed what they thought had occurred. Their theory was that Bridger enticed April into his car with some excuse, then brought her to his house, sexually assaulted her, and killed her. After that, he started getting rid of her body. Investigators found out that Bridger had previously been employed at a slaughterhouse. They suspected he might have used those abilities to dispose of the body before burning some of her remains in his fireplace. But forensic experts agreed that he couldn't have destroyed everything, meaning some parts had to be hidden elsewhere. As the case progressed, Bridger was put in jail to wait for his trial, which was scheduled to start in a few months. Meanwhile, search teams had no intention of quitting. Even as the weather got worse and new clues stopped coming in, they kept searching, still hoping to locate April's remains. The prosecution was sure they could get a conviction, even without a body, but they still wouldn't stop searching. In all, search teams thoroughly searched 60 square kilometers, 37 square miles of land, covering every potential hiding spot for April's remains, but they found nothing. Ultimately, April's parents had no option but to bury only the tiny pieces found in Bridger's home. To remember her, they also put some of her personal items inside the coffin. Hundreds of people went to her funeral, with many traveling from other towns just to pay their respects. Throughout the search, April had become like family to the whole community, and now they had to say goodbye. In January 2013, 3 months after April was killed, Bridger appeared before the judge and pleaded not guilty to murder. But at the same time, he admitted he was probably responsible for her death. During the trial, he maintained his story, asserting he had accidentally hit April with his car, even though there was strong evidence to the contrary. He also insisted he still couldn't recall where he had concealed her remains. And yet, Bridger kept portraying himself as the benevolent one, claiming he had only wanted to assist April after the supposed accident. The trial continued until late May, and ultimately the jury convicted him. He received a life sentence without the chance of parole, which is an uncommon sentence in the UK. After the trial, Bridger was moved to a different prison where another inmate attacked him, stabbing him multiple times with a homemade knife, but his injuries were not deadly. For years following his conviction, detectives repeatedly contacted Bridger, hoping he would finally reveal where April's remains were, but he never changed his story. He simply kept claiming he remembered nothing. Then, unexpectedly, police received a tip from another prisoner. According to this inmate, Bridger had admitted to dumping April's remains in the river close to his house. But investigators were not persuaded. If a bag with human remains had been put in the water, it likely would have floated to the surface. And considering that search teams had extensively searched the river for miles, it seemed very improbable that Bridger was being truthful. A year after he was sentenced, the local government purchased Bridger's house, and in November 2014, they chose to tear it down. Many local residents, including April's parents, gathered to watch the demolition of the house, the exact spot where she had been taken from them. In 2018, April's family went through another very sad experience. Her father became gravely ill and experienced some memory loss. When he woke up, he began asking his wife why April hadn't come to see him at the hospital, and so she had to tell him the terrible news again, informing him that their daughter was no longer alive. In a harsh turn of events, he was made to experience the grief of losing April once more. Regarding the search for her remains, it has not continued since 2013. Police have said they are prepared to resume the search if new information becomes available, but as of now, there has been no advancement. It has now been more than 12 years since April was abducted, and detectives acknowledge that the likelihood of ever finding her is extremely low. The April Jones case is still a deeply distressing event in British criminal history. While Mark Bridger's conviction brought justice, the fact that April's body is missing causes ongoing pain for her family and the community of Mackinac. Her story is a strong reminder that we must protect innocent people, stay alert to those who would hurt them, and always work towards a safer world for all children.